Welcome to the Lions Share, where we talk family, faith, football, finance, and fun. I'm your host, Mitch Lyons. Today's episode, as always, brought to you by Mitch Lyons Wealth, your best game plan to protect, grow, and win retirement. You may ask yourself, why is Mitch wearing a Steeler jersey today? It's because we have a tremendous guest on. We have Super Bowl winning Hall of Fame coach Bill Cowher, who was also my coach my last 3 years of my NFL career. Coach, welcome to the show today.
Mitch, it is great to be on your show. You look great in that jersey, and I'm looking forward to going down memory lane. And speaking of memory lane, we've tried this podcast about two or three times. This one's going to work, but it's not kind of like starting over practice, right? It's kind of like sometimes we have a 9-on-7 drill. I don't like the way it's going. We just start over.
That's always the favorite when you're 12, 15 reps into a run period and all of a sudden coach wants you to start over. But yeah, we have had some technical difficulties, but God willing, we're going to get through this thing.
Yes,
And
yes.
I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your wife Veronica's patience as she's had to be our technical studio help. So we finally got it going, but it's great to have you on the show. It's been a long time since we've had a chance to talk. 25 years, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
99 was my last year in Pittsburgh. You obviously went on and continued your career pretty successfully after that and won yourself a Super Bowl and made the Hall of Fame. So you're doing all right. But the crazy thing is you've been a studio host longer than you were a coach now, which is unbelievable.
It really is. I mean, I've been there for this is my 18th year. I stepped right down after I stepped down from the game in 2007, where I right to CBS, and I've been there ever since. And it's been a great transition. It really has. But I really enjoyed the time I was in Pittsburgh and those years with you. Your first year, I think you were on IR. We went to a championship game. And matter of fact, I had to ask you, like, because I don't know, were you in Pontiac for the Thanksgiving Day? Were
Oh
you
yeah,
on?
1998. Yeah,
So,
yeah, the
so
coin flip game.
yeah, yeah. Tell me about the coin flip game. I mean, the coin flip game where I had Carnell and Jerome come off the sideline and tell me that the referee got it wrong.
I
We
mean,
had some change the
I've
rules.
watched that video a lot of times, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure what the heck Jerome said, but he kind of said
No, he did.
hails,
He did a
hails.
great job. He did. Yeah, yeah. Hales. Yeah, I mean, it was like, I said, Jerome, you did a great job of covering your bases on both ends.
Yeah, he did. And I mean, if I remember right, it was Phil Luckett, right? Who
Yes.
the referee Phil Luckett, who had a back-to-back bad weeks. He had to deal with that one, and then I think the next week was the butt fumble or something, wasn't it? He had to deal with.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Well, it's like you had Jerome and you had Carnell, two guys that you'd leave your kids with,
pretty
right?
smart guys.
Smart guys, honest to the core. And so they came down here telling me that he was wrong. Phil Luckett's coming over and said they did this. It's like having your kids walk in from the yard and says he did it or he did. I don't know. I wasn't out there. What do you want me to do? I said, so let's just cover this kick. We're kicking off,
Yeah,
and he actually never got the ball back. But they
and the
changed
rest
the
is
rules.
history because Barry Sanders took over and we lost the game.
I know, I
And
know.
unfortunately, we were 7-4 at that point coming into that game. We win that game, we're 8-4, and it didn't work out so well, and we didn't finish the season so well, and didn't make the playoffs. So that was a bummer.
I know, I know.
So the funny thing about that game was because I'm sure you had to relive that a number of times over the years, but uh, because we played on Thursday, you had given us that weekend off. You'd given me permission just to stay home because we were in Michigan. Because I had my, number one, we had that weekend off anyway, so you let me just stay in Michigan rather than take the team plane back. And I
Yeah.
had to go to my high school 10-year reunion the next day. And what do you think they all wanted to talk about? Yeah, I had to relive the coin flip for the entire 3-hour reunion. So. But that was fun times. Looking back on it now, they're fun stories. So let me start with just kind of how I got to Pittsburgh because there's a few stories there. So I'm coming out of Atlanta. Jerry Glanville had been my coach, drafted me, wanted to start using the tight end more in the run and shoot offense, which was fun my rookie year. And then he got fired. June Jones takes over, who's a straight run and shoot coach. So I'm pretty much the only tight end on the team for 3 years. Not a lot of upside, but job security was good. June would tell me every year, "Hey, this is going to extend your career," and he was right because when I finally got a chance to play, I tore up both knees with you. Uh, I'll always remember, so I'm on the outside looking in. Atlanta switches coaches. Dan Reeves comes in. He's got a couple tight ends he's bringing from New York. He's not interested in this guy he doesn't know anything about. And fortunately, Mike Mularkey, who was your tight end coach at the time, watched a little film of me, liked what he saw, and got your blessing, I'm assuming, to come to bring me in for a workout. We hit it off pretty well, and you guys decide to sign me. But on that visit, when I first came in to see you guys, I'm going in to actually meet you. And I walk by your assistant Mia, and she looks up at me and she says, "Oh, hey, Mark." And I'm like, "Oh, she must have got my name wrong. She must have thought I was thought my name was Mark instead of Mitch." And then I walk through the weight room, and somebody else says, "Hey, Mark." And little did I know, I resembled Mark Bruner quite a bit, who you were bringing me in to back up potentially, right? And
Yes.
And Mia literally thought I was Mark. And I went to that first training camp in '97, and I had so, first of all, I'm coming from Atlanta, where we're used to having like 100 people on the hill watching practice during training camp. Come to Latrobe when we got thousands of people, right? Which was crazy for me. And I get so many Mark Bruner requests for auto. Mr. Bruner, can you sign this? Mr. Bruner, can you sign that? I'm not Mark. I'm not Mark. I'm not Mark. It was that the whole year. So 1998, I came in with a goatee, just trying to differentiate myself a little bit, so I wouldn't get asked to be sign Mark's autograph so dang much.
I love it. I love Well, listen, you fit what we were looking for. I mean, we had Mark Bruner. We were a big tight end team, love to run the football. You fit that mold. You were Michigan State. I know Jimmy Miller, I think you played with him.
Yep.
We had Myron Bell, I think was on the
Oh
team
yeah.
there. I just loved guys from Michigan State, honestly. When I remember we had Plexico Burris, and you go back down the line, and just the offense that you had up there was so similar in style to what we were running in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And so it just was a natural fit for you.
Yeah, I came out of a Smash Mouth program with Coach George Perlis, who had a
Yeah.
long history with the Steelers, and that was really cool for me because I'd heard so much about the Steelers from George over the years, right? In fact, all our bowl rings are patterned after the first four Super Bowls, so I feel like I got a Super Bowl ring, in my collection because they all look like the old, Chuck Noll Super Bowl rings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was really cool being able to bring it full circle. And then later on, I served on the board of Michigan State University with George, and I kind of got to complete the circle and get to know him more on a personal level than a coach player level, and so that was kind of neat. But there's a number of things that I look back on my career with you, and some things that stand out. The first of which is my first training camp. I'm there battling a guy named John Farquhar, who was a
Oh
really
yeah.
good guy, and ended up playing with New Orleans a couple years after that. But I pull a groin muscle in practice, and I'm out a couple days, and I just can't. I think we played one game, and we're going into the second or third preseason game, and we're walking back from the little grass field outside of Three River Stadium, and we're walking back after practice. And you said, hey, how you feeling? And I said, well, I can't really push off. I can't explode. I'm not really confident. And you said, well, I got to see you play. I got to see you play this week. And yeah, no, I want to. I definitely. He goes, no, you go, no, I need to see you play. Message received. I'm going to figure out a way to play. So I played that week. And you mentioned Jim Miller, who was my quarterback at Michigan State. First play I'm in, I got a seam route. Why I'm running a seam route, I have no idea. I don't know. I should be blocking a D end or something. But I run a seam route. He overthrows me. I extend and I aggravate my groin again. But I knew I wasn't going to go limping back to the huddle. I had to figure it out, and I stayed in there and played through it. But I always remember that, and I say that to kids and my kids and other people I talk to. There's a difference between being hurt and injured, like you said.
Yes. I would never ask you to play injured, but you know what? You're not going to feel 100% all the time.
No, it's comical when people say, "Hey, are you healthy?" Who's healthy? Nobody's healthy.
Right, right,
Healthy
right.
in the NFL for very long. Maybe the first week of camp if you're lucky. Then everybody's hurting.
Yeah, and I think, and I know there's so many things, Mitch. I remember just being a coach. I always felt like my job was like I looked at you, I had $3 at home, and I felt like you were like my sons at work. And it's all about, you get built up in this. And I know one of the first things I used to always say every training camp is just remember, as you go through the emotional ups and downs, is you're never as good as you think you are. Don't take yourself too seriously. And you're never as bad as they say you are. Don't beat yourself up when the critics start coming after you. So it was kind of having that even keel that you had to have through the course of the professional sports where you walk into that building. I need you to be selfless, not selfish. And so just leave your ego at the door, come in here, and we'll work through it and find out exactly what your role may be. And I'm just going to ask you to embrace it and just look and seize every opportunity that comes along the way.
Yeah, and I always appreciated that. You always talked about, hey, we're going to battle in camp. You're battling for position. You're trying to get your pecking order. But once that final roster set, you always talked about, hey, know your role, accept your role. You might not be happy you're not starting or not, but it is what it is right now. So just accept your role and if your time comes, you better damn well be ready because you can feel sorry for yourself right up till the time you blow it when you finally get your chance. But I always appreciated that about you. And let me
Well,
ask you this because people want to know this, people that own businesses or entrepreneurs and whatnot. How did you get guys to buy into that and be so successful over your career?
I think it's being real with them and being honest with them. And I think it was like making sure that everything we talked about was about teamwork. It's about, what you're able to contribute, but more importantly, what you're willing to sacrifice. I mean, when sometimes it is that role that you feel like you could do more, but that's not your job to even worry about that. And so it was almost about a collaboration that we had between players and coaches. I wanted to have that back and forth. And, I used to always say, you can ask, I have an open door policy. You can walk in there. If you're going to ask, just be no, when you walk in, any questions you ask, you ask a tough question, expect a tough answer. Why am I not playing? Because right now, I don't think you are our best option. And,
Right, right.
I think what I have in front of you is better. So how do I get better? Or how do I beat them out? I don't know. You show me. You prove to me why you should be out there and the person is there. And in the meantime, be as good as you can be. And don't dwell on what you're not having. Dwell on it, just waiting for that opportunity to seize it, and then don't look back. So I just think is being honest with people, holding people accountable, giving people a sense of structure, expectation. I was very big on making sure the meeting started on time, be on the field on time, and we can have all the other things you want off the field. I could joke with you, but when we step between those lines, it was all business.
Yeah, and that's that I always appreciated it. And the one thing I'd always remember you saying in meetings and whatnot, whether it was going good, whether it's going bad, it's a mindset. You always would say
Yes.
it's a mindset. You got to have the mindset, right?
Right.
Hey, things aren't going great. Well, have the mindset. Get out there and work your way through it. And or if it's going great, it doesn't change anything. You guys still have the mindset and get out there and work because there's a reason we've been successful to date, and it's not going to continue if we don't keep the right mindset.
And I think the mindset was everything. I'll never forget the one time we'd go outside and why are we going in the bubble? I said, because we're not playing in a bubble. We're playing out here. It's a mindset. It's not that cold. And then I was sitting there one time and I think Jones goes, if it's not that cold, why are you jumping up and down? And why you got your hands in your pocket? I go, because I'm working through my mindset.
Yeah, well, then you had Bob Bratkowski, the receiver coach. I remember he never came out to practice. We had some cool practices in Three Rivers now. The
Oh
wind
yeah.
would be ripping
Oh,
through and Brat would never wear pants. He'd wear hats, gloves, shirts, coats, scarves, but he always had shorts on. His
shorts
legs would
on.
be beat red. I'm like, Brat, what are you thinking, man? I don't
Hey,
know. It was a mindset, I guess. He saw how
it,
tough
it
he
was a
was.
mind. It was a mindset.
Yeah. Well, there's one other story that sticks out in my mind in with respect to my time in Pittsburgh, and it was kind of a funny one. I think it was '98. We're playing the Titans. We're grinding the game, grinding the ball away at the end. Pounding them with Jerome and running the clock out. We're up a couple scores, and Bruner and I are in there, and we're battling our whole thing. And Mike Malarkey, our coach, we always are talking about playing to the whistle, one violent shove
Yep.
at the whistle, try to get them to give you the look. Or if you got them to swing, and we had a little fine system where we'd throw money in the kitty for an end of season party, and sometimes Mike would throw a buck in if you got him to if you shoved him at the whistle or if you got him to look and if you got a swing from the guy, then it was an extra deal. And if you got your picture in the paper, you had to pay the fine, and it was always Bruner because he was the starter, so we loved that. He'd get his picture in the paper, we'd fine him 5, $10 every time. So he was picking up, and he made more than me, so it was good that he was picking up the bill at the end of the year. But we're going, and I shoved this guy at the whistle, and he ends up grabbing my mask. And I'm looking out my ear hole, and my natural reaction is I finally get my head out of there, I come up and I swing, and the ref, of course, sees it. He throws the flag. He ejects me from the game. I have to go over on the sideline. I'm fuming. I'm ticked off. And then I realize, oh, this is like a $5,000, $10,000 fine for getting kicked out, which now I'm even more mad. Now he tells me I got to get off the field. I can't stay on the sideline. So I've got to jog from the sideline over through the end zone into the tunnel. And Three River Stadium, everyone's throwing waving their terrible towels. And I'm thinking I'm pretty neat, running off, waving to the crowd. And I get in the locker room, I'm thinking to myself, I got my 2.5-year-old son at home. I know he's watching the game, and he just witnessed his dad get ejected from a game. That's fantastic. So I get the fine, and we appeal it, or I appeal it, and you pull me in your office like on a Wednesday that next week, and we're going to have our conference call with the NFL, the fine guy who ended up being Gene Washington, and you say, well, hey, I think we got a shot because it doesn't really show on the TV copy. So I sit down and you dial, and the guy answers, hello, and you say, hey, Gene, it's Bill Cowher, and he says, Billy, and I remember just thinking, yes, if he's calling him Billy, we got a shot. So he ends up saying, "Hey, we really couldn't see it. We're gonna waive that fine." And I was just like, "Yes," because 5 or 10 grand to me at that time was a little
Right.
different than maybe to you or Mark Bruner. So I was like, "Man, I'm not paying 5 or 10 grand for this nonsense." So
Well,
Appreciate that.
No, no. Well, Gene and I had a lot of conversations because it wasn't just you. I was talking to Gene about it. We had guys like Greg Lloyd was hitting people coming across the middle, and I mean, we had Joey Porter. I mean, we were on. I was on that phone a lot with him during the course of that. And what you did was like I said, "Come on, Gene. I mean, you can't even see it." The
I was
guy
a
got
choir boy compared to those guys.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So, so yeah, that was a give and take right there. So I'm glad that we were able to rescind it.
Well, we had a lot of, I mean, you look back on the defense back in those days. I mean, hey, that's what the steel curtain days were built on, were the defense, and that continued. Before I got there, you had Kevin Green along with Greg Lloyd, and Greg was there
Yep.
when I was there. But guys like, Carnell Lake, Mr. Goodbody. I mean, what that guy was a freak, athletically, and the guy that was just that stands out in my mind to this day was just Levon Kirkland,
Ah,
biggest middle linebacker you're ever going to see. I mean, I think he might have started the training camp at around 260, but I think he was about 285 by the end of the year and could still run with running backs down the seam, right?
he could run with running backs. I remember telling him every time he came to minicamp, I said, "I'm gonna tell you something. You're eating your way to being a nose tackle right up there with Joel Steed. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
you're gonna be up there with him." And I said, "So be careful." I mean, you're right. He was amazing. I mean, he
He-
from kid from Clemson,
Yep.
and he was like, well, he was in my first draft class. I mean,
Yeah,
so
he could really just run, but I always took pride in, I'd have fun during practice. I love going against those guys in practice because hey, I wasn't expected when I'm a guy running a 5 flat on a good day, and here I am going against these world-class athletes. But I'd run a little 5 yard and up, and occasionally beat him down the seam, and he didn't like that. Man, I would rub it in every time I did, and hoot and holler, and so that was always fun. But the one thing I remember about it was always in Latrobe, you'd blow the whistle, and hey, it was backs on backers, and the tight ends would go over with the backs to do pass pro against the
right,
linebackers, right? And we rarely had to do that. You weren't throwing the tight ends back in that day back in the backfield much, but we would go over there just to be bodies. And they'd take a couple of tight ends over to help with the backs.
yeah,
And you're going against Greg Lloyd or a Joey Porter coming off the end, or you might have the middle backer running up with a
right.
five
Because
yard
I
running
would
start.
pick one or the other. You had to read
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't dumb, right? I knew that you only have so much tread on the tire in your head and your knees and everything else. So you gotta have a little self-preservation. I would do the math ahead of time about, all right, how is this lining up? Where am I in the rotation? And where's Levon? Because I sure as heck was not going to be lined up 5 yards deep in the backfield, give Levon a 10-yard running start to come up and either A, run me over, or B, I'm gonna hunker down and he's just gonna swim me or whatever, spin on me and make me look like an idiot. And worst case was him running you over because the dude packed E equals MC squared, and I didn't want to be on the receiving end of that. He was a monster, and so I'd figure it out, and I'd be like, hey Harold Bishop, hey go ahead take this one, or get one of the little running backs, hey take this one, bud, get one of these young free agent or rookies to take the rep.
You know what? In that drill, truly kind of got practice started because I remember that was right near the end of individual period. So we
Oh
kind of
yeah.
right from there. That kind of got the blood going a little bit. I mean, we got a little spirited over there because it was like all of a sudden it was like, okay, who won that one? Like, oh
Hey,
no,
that was just I mean that was kind of you were a little disadvantaged as an offensive player in that drill. I felt like, I mean, come on,
yeah.
they didn't have to even work around any linemen. They just got a running start to
But
come
but
through.
but, but you know what? When you did stone one of those linebackers, everybody there, man.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
was like it was like you were going to lose, but when you did win, whoever won, man, you made an impression.
Yeah, well, and one thing I always, that you had to be physical to an extent, right? You had to have pads on. You had to replicate game speed, or else, you just now things changed. I mean, I remember my rookie year in Atlanta. It was the first year of the CBA, and back then Jerry Glanville, I mean, he hadn't caught on to this whole salary cap thing yet. We were going pads morning, pads afternoon. We were pads every single practice, and in fact, my first mini camp there we were not in pads, but we might as well have been because we were going full team. It was 11 on 11. I'm running a drag pattern. I get jammed by Mike Gann. Pierce Holt, our $7 million guaranteed, which at that time was unheard of, a 3 year, $7 million guaranteed deal he got to come from San Francisco. He's running a little game where he's looping over, and we run into each other and smash heads. I finish my drag, my head's ringing. I look back, and Pierce is laying on the ground with a broken jaw.
Oh my
So here
gosh.
I am thinking, oh, this is great. My first mini camp, I just broke their free agent, who their whole off-season, off-season media blitz is. Oh, we're building the brick wall, and Pierce Holt's the first brick in this brick wall, right? And I just broke his jaw. So the next practice, I'm laying on the grass stretching, and I see Jerry Glanville coming with his cowboy hat and his glasses and his big belt buckle, and he's sauntering over to me, and he asked the guy next to me, who was a crusty old veteran, everybody called Badger, Mike Ruther. He says, Badger, what round did I draft car 86 in? 17th? And he's, I don't know, coach. And I was sixth round. There's only 7 rounds. And he's asking if I was the 17th round. He goes, rookie, if you do that again, you just broke my $7 million man's jaw. If you do that again, you're going to be on the first bus out of here. Not even a plane ride. I got the message. I wanted to say, coach, how about we wear some helmets or maybe
Yeah,
some shells
right.
or something? But so that was insane. And we had 35 straight days of 90 plus degrees in camp, and never didn't have pads on. It was incredible.
Wow.
So fast forward, he gets fired, and then June Jones comes in. We were never in pads twice a day. We never had 2 days, 2 days in a row, and it was the same deal with you, right? But the thing I appreciate about you and June, where you guys played the game. Granted, June is a quarterback, so that's debatable whether he
Right.
really got it. You got it. You were a linebacker. You were a special teams guy. You knew the toll on the body, and
Totally.
you gave us breaks when we needed it.
And you know what? I think that was part of it to me. Is it was I'm going to ask you to do a lot of things and make that kind of commitment and to the cause. And yet at the same time, I'm going to make sure that that I'm going to take care of you too.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm sure I did at some point in training camp. I would call you up and take you to the movies. Just
Oh, yeah.
doing something like that, which is like it's like. You ask these guys to lay it on the line, but at the same time, man, I'm with you. I'd run the gassers with you guys, and I try to do all the things that I would never ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And at the same time, it's like you're trying to build that resiliency, that toughness, as we talk about, not just physically but mentally. And just holding people accountable, and just being there's a certain style that we're going to play here, and it's not for everybody. I remember saying this is not football's not for everybody, and this team is not for everybody. But once you're on this team, just buy in. Give me what you got. I will take care of you, but I'm going to push you, probably make you uncomfortable at times, because that's the way I can only get to make the best out of you is push you to the point where it's uncomfortable. But I will also take care of you. I'll never ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
Yeah. That's awesome. So that's enough about my time in Pittsburgh. Let's go back a little bit. Obviously, you came on into the NFL, or not came into the head coaching role at a pretty young age in 1992. But your career had actually started. You played in the NFL for I think 5 years, right?
I
And
did.
played some time in Cleveland, ended your career in Philly, and then got hired right as you're done playing. You get hired as the special teams coach in Cleveland under Marty Schottenheimer. And I know I remember my time with you. You always had a lot of respect for Marty, and you later went on to be defensive coordinator with him in Kansas City. But it seemed like we played Kansas City twice a year when I was in Pittsburgh with you. We played them once in the preseason. I think just about every year we played them in the preseason, and it was always out there. And I ended my career on a play out there in Arrowhead Stadium, and I actually revisited it for the first time this last year. I was at the first game of the year, Kansas City and Baltimore, and that was my first time back. And I was like, wow, this is kind of surreal. But
Wow.
we always played out there, and I remember you going out to dinner with him and stuff. But maybe speak to just what an impact he had on your life as a player, but obviously getting your coaching career started.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because my first year was with the Cardiac Kids, 1980, Cleveland Browns. I was a rookie free agent. I was cut the year before from Philly, matter of fact. So I signed like in January. I mean, I had got like $1,000 sign-on bonus. It was like $684 when I took out the taxes. I still have the check to this day. So
Mom, what's FICA? That's what I said first time I got signed. Mom,
yeah,
what's FICA?
yeah, right. And so I played for Marty for 3 years. I got traded to Philadelphia. And as a matter of fact, during the time of playing with Marty, that we were walking off the field one time, he said, Cowher, you're tough and you're smart. Someday, if I ever get a chance, I'm gonna hire you as a coach. And I'm thinking, well, that's not bad. So I go to Philadelphia. I have a great year in '83. Best year probably I had in the league. I become special teams captain in 1984, just signed a contract. I get hurt in the fourth game of the season. Marty takes over in '84, about midway through the season for Sam Rutigliano, calls me up and says, hey, do you want to come back and coach? And I said, well, he goes, listen, what are you going to make next? I said, he goes, what are you going to make next year? I said, I'd like $125,000. And he said, well, I'm going to tell you, You're going to work three times as much and you're going to make three times less. I'm going to offer you $50,000, you special teams coach, and let me know by Friday. And I go, and then he hung up. I go, so much for negotiations. So, but you know what? I sat there and just thought about the fact that, it was my fifth year. I just had my third, scope on my knees, nothing serious. But I said, I looked at the Philadelphia Eagles next year's schedule. Based on that, every game was going to be on turf. I said, I guess I was done playing on turf, and I love coaching, so I could bypass that. So I went back and coached special teams for 2 years with Marty, and coaching guys I just played with for the two previous years. So
Yeah.
that element of coaching with players and coaching guys that you played with, I knew I sat back in those seats as a player, and I knew a coach that I would respect. Like I wanted a guy that just tell me the way, just be consistent. I mean, tell me the truth. Just tell me where I stand. And so I try to always be that way. Coached secondary for 2 years, and then matter of fact, I had a chance to go with Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells with the Giants in 1989 to be their defensive back coach. But then Marty ended up getting fired and going to Kansas City. So, but he gave me my first chance, so I went with him. And then 3 years later, I went back to Pittsburgh and as a head coach following Chuck Noll.
Yeah, and before we move on to Pittsburgh, you mentioned coaching guys that you played with, and it's
Yeah.
curious because there's not a lot of guys that bridge the gap. I think there's 13 years between you and I, our ages.
Yeah.
You played with a guy who I ended up playing with Atlanta his last 3 years, a guy named Clay Matthews, and we're not talking Green Bay Packers Clay Matthews. That kid was about that high when he was running around the Atlanta
Yeah.
locker room
Right.
with me. His dad played with me, Clay Matthews and longtime Brown, great guy, probably one of my favorite teammates. And I had the opportunity to locker next to him his last 3 years in Atlanta. And I mean, this is a guy played 19 years, played till he's age 40 at outside backer, which is just unbelievable. And people, unless you don't know because that's incredible to think. And this is a guy, in my opinion, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I know his daughter Jennifer is really trying to rally the troops to get him, and he made the first cut in this year's. I'd really like to see him get in the Hall of Fame. Speak to your time with Clay a little bit.
Yeah, Clay and Leslie. Leslie is Clay's wife, and like he was married. And when I went to Cleveland, he brought me in. I was in that linebacker room with him and Dick Ambrose and Robert L. Jackson and Charlie Hall, and I mean, he played with Banks, Chip Banks from USC, another guy and he brought me in there, and he taught me how to play outside linebacker. When I was with the Cleveland Browns, Mitch, I was a backup inside linebacker. But I was also like that guy that could be a swing linebacker. So because I was smart, but I really never played outside. And I remember Clay used to take time after practice and talk about footwork, talk about leverage, talk about angles, what to look for. And so the little idiosyncrasies of that position, he was a master of. And I agree with you from this standpoint. No one was as productive and as consistent on the field as Clay Matthews was. What he did through the course of time, he played every game. I think the only time he missed, matter of fact, I was backing him up. We're playing a game against the Eagles. He hurts his ankle,
Yeah.
and I come in, and he's out for at least a month or 6 weeks. And the very next week we go on strike. This is 1982. So my chance to play, by the time we end the strike, Clay's already back healthy. That's why I said, but you know what? I said Clay Matthews to me epitomizes really what that position was about. He could cover, he could rush. I mean, he could do it all. He could play the run. I mean, this was a guy that he knew he never came off the field. And
Yeah.
to me, what he did through the course of time, it's a travesty that he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and hopefully he gets there. I mean, this is a guy 40 years old. He had 6.5 sacks his last year in Atlanta. I
Yeah,
mean, you
right.
get paid a lot of money nowadays to get 6.5 sacks for a team, right?
Oh
And
my gosh.
I remember it sticks out in my mind because if I remember right, I believe he had 3 sacks in one game, and I think he was picking up like 50 grand every sack he had that year. So he was pretty excited that game. Every one he was ringing up another 50 grand. So
Hey,
they're
and
all
then
happy for him.
the one thing about Clay too is he kept whatever he
Oh,
made.
he's
Uh,
cheap.
oh
Oh, he's
yeah,
cheap.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like we go out to dinner. He goes, "Hey, there's four of us. Let's just split that up four times." Like, oh my gosh, yeah. Like I'm a rookie. You just like you just signed a contract.
Yeah.
No, no, no. Let's split this thing up evenly. I'm like, oh my
It's
gosh.
funny you bring that up because we used to play cards down in Atlanta, and Clay, I jokingly called him my ATM because we'd settle up on Mondays because we'd play all week and we'd settle up on Mondays. And there was one weekend in St. Louis that it didn't go well for him. I called it the St. Louis Massacre. He had to write me a check for like 2 grand or something like that. And he wrote me the check. He hands it to me Monday. He goes, Leslie never needs to know about this. So Clay, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Leslie's probably, hopefully not watching it, but it happened. And
Uh,
that same week, Billy Joe Tolliver, we had just signed, and he had to stroke me a check for a couple grand too. The game of Boo-Ray got a little out of hand that weekend. Oh,
Boo-ray was the game, man. I tell you,
yeah,
be careful what you're doing. I tell you, I actually, it's so funny you say that because one of the first things when we were on the plane, I used to put the players, like I'd walk back up. I'm thinking, man. And I remember I went into I got into the elevator. We got to the hotel, and everyone rushes into the first elevator. Well, I got into the first elevator, and a bunch of players rushed in at the end. And I'm sitting over there, and one of the players says, hey, dude, I want your check on Monday. And I just said, oh, you know what? I'm like, okay, this is getting out of hand. I remember I called in the guys. I said, listen, I'm done. You guys cannot be taking money from guys who didn't even make the team. You're taking checks, preseason
yeah,
checks. They may not even make the team. You
right.
can't do that. I said, no, we get this season. I'm not going to tell you what to do because people they have a salary, but not till you get to the season. You can't take away the money. These guys are going through a whole training camp. And you just took away
Right.
everything they got.
Yeah, yeah. So I tried to always take it from the guys I knew I had it, right? Bob Whitfield. Bob Whitfield he was awful. He was a terrible card player. He just didn't know it. I don't know. He didn't care. He probably wishes he had some of that money back now, I would imagine. But yeah, he was my other ATM. So anyway, but that's funny. All right, so let's talk a little bit. You mentioned coming into Pittsburgh and taking over for Coach Noel. There's a great documentary that just came out last night, Dawn of a Dynasty, which is talking about their 1974 team, the first Super Bowl team.
Yeah,
But obviously he went on to win 4 Super Bowls. And here you come in 1992 to take over for a guy, the only coach in Pittsburgh since 1969, which is I always just marvel at the fact there's been 3 head coaches at Pittsburgh since 1969. Chuck Noll, yourself, and Mike Tomlin, which is just unbelievable. I don't know what second place is on that, but it's a lot more than 3. I know that. And
yeah.
talk a little bit about, and I know you've told the story before, but Chuck Noll, a lot of wisdom there. You probably tried to glean from him, but he wasn't all that forthcoming with anything, any advice, was he?
Oh, it was funny. I got there when I was in '92, and I just signed, and so I was getting ready. We're getting ready for the draft, and I said, we're going down to Clemson for a pro day, and he says, hey, listen, why don't you take the plane? I'm taking Chuck's taking the plane down to Florida for to go down there. And he says, why don't you just jump on the plane with him? I go, oh, this is awesome. This is great. I said, so, I'm just like 3 months into it. And like, we're getting ready for the draft. I'm thinking, oh man, this is great. I got so many questions I've written down. Like, what can I ask him? So we get in the plane. Hey, Chuck, how you doing, coach? I said, I'm doing great. And I said, he goes, man, you're from Pittsburgh. I go, yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh. But can I ask you a couple questions? And he says, sure. I says, what's the building like? Like what's that dynamic in the building? Like where is there a certain person I should go to? Is it Tom Donahoe? Is it Joe Gordon? I said, Mr. Rooney. I said, what's the dynamic that's in the building? He goes, it's a good building. I go, oh, I know. I said, it's a great building. I said, but is there a certain person that you work with? I said, so do you go to Dan? Do you go to Tom? Who do you go to first if you really have a question? He goes, they're both good guys. I go, I know they're good guys. I said, I get that. I go, but what's the dynamic? He goes, well, he goes, I really like the building. I go, okay, you're not saying anything about the building. Okay, great. Well, let me ask you about the 2 quarterbacks, Bobby Brister and Neil O'Donnell. I said, I got them both. I'm probably going to open it up to competition for training camp. Your feelings on both those quarterbacks? He goes, they're both good quarterbacks. I go, I know, but is there like one that you like? Was one smarter than the other? Was one more athletic? Did you have any problems with any of them? He goes, they both have their qualities. They both are good at certain things that they do.
What
And I
what
go,
are those things?
okay. And I get in, and he goes, let me ask you, coach, how's the family? Where are you going to live? I go, okay. You don't even want to talk football, do you? I'm not thinking that right now. So my whole thing was, I walked away from that. His whole thing was, you'll figure it out. You be you. I don't want to prejudge anything that's in that building. And I think he walked away from it. And I don't know if he was happy or not happy when he was asked to step down and when he did step down. But it was like, you know what? Do it your way. And so, having said that, people said, okay, well, what kind of advice did you give Mike when you came in? I said, the same advice that Chuck Noll gave me. None. I said, the only thing I left him was I left him an Iron City beer right there in the refrigerator. I left him one beer. And from that time going forth, we've talked a few times, but you know what? I get it. I mean, and it's a building, and you talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, it starts at the top. It
Yeah.
starts to the chief, to Dan, to now Art. Their core values that they have. It's a family-run business. It's more about family than it is about results. You're going to have tough times, but it's all about collaboration. It's about transparency. So long as you communicate and collaborate and tell everybody what's going on, we may disagree. We go into that room, we may disagree. And there's going to have to be a little bit of sacrifice that you're going to have to make. I'm not going to, I want this decision. That we make a decision, we make it together. So that's the biggest thing I took away from that is that there's lines of delineation and they may get a little bit shaky. You may cross them at times, but the bottom line is what we did together as a organization.
Well, they were amazing, and I always just remember, Mr. Rooney always coming in the locker room after the games, win or loss. He'd come around, he'd shake everybody's hand, ask you how you're doing, and he just was a quality guy. I had the opportunity earlier this year to read a book, and the name escapes me right now, but it was about the start of the NFL. And I'll
Yeah.
get it to you if you haven't read it yet. But it tells a story about really the five founding fathers, with Art Rooney Sr. being one of them. And it was actually fascinating to read, just to read his history and those early days of the NFL. Everybody knows the behemoth it is now, but what they went through to build this thing and to stick with it was really amazing. And I always appreciated it. Going back to my time when I came into the Steelers. I mean, I was out of a job. I'm looking to catch on with the team. You guys gave me that opportunity. You signed me in April. And I had my second son was going to be born in May, and we already knew he had a congenital heart defect that we had to go through a three surgery process, which was unnerving to begin with. But now I'm trying to, hey, I want to make a good impression with you guys. But yet he's got a surgery in May. He's going to have another surgery in September. And you guys were all so accommodating, regarding, having to deal with that. And, I just always appreciated that. And that came, like you said, it came from the top down.
Yeah, I mean, it was all about family. I mean, I think, we talked every day. He was there every day, and really, the thing we talked about the least was probably the team we're going to play, or even about our team. Like it was more about, how's your family doing? What do you think about the state of the NFL? And it was just like, it was more about family, and it was more about the state of football, not so much specifically about like, okay, this player is not playing well, or what do you think how we're going to do this week? It was more about the overall state of the game because that to me, he didn't want the game to change. It was about the game. It wasn't about any individual success. It was about what's in the best interest of the game to continue to grow. And I think that he was an integral part of that with going down there with Roger Goodell, Paul Tagliabue. I remember being with him. And I just know when they used to come into the building, they would sit down and they used to talk with him because he had a great way of viewing things. And the biggest, it was so simple, it was simplicity at its finest because he got down right to the core values.
Yeah.
Let's stick to the core values and let's make our decision based on that.
Yeah. And, you mentioned it wasn't about winning or losing, but at the end of the day, everybody knows in the NFL, it comes down to winning. You're not going to be around long if you don't win. And here you
Right.
go. You come over now, Coach Noel had, the last few years weren't that great. And then you take over and, you start off with six straight playoff appearances. That's a good way to endear yourself to an owner, I would think.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing in today's game. Is that you do have to win early to buy yourself to have those 98, 99 seasons where,
Yeah.
you have some tough times. I mean, and like you said, 98 became one of those ones where I don't know if it's one play or one coin toss, but one game sometimes can kind of derail you, and it did for us. And I think 99 to me was just it was just a lot of injuries. We just had a lot.
Injuries. Dermani went down. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was probably the thing to me. Like, if you look at the centers of the Pittsburgh Steelers down through the years, go back to Ray Mansfield. They called him the Ranger. He was like 15 years. And you go to Mike Webster, Hall of Fame. Then
Yeah.
you go to Monty Dawson, Hall of Fame. And then he started getting hurt. And then and at that point, it's when I actually went up and got Jeff Hardings
Right.
from Detroit and brought him down. And I remember taking him down this hallway. I go, here's all the great centers that have been here. And you're going to be the next one. And he was. And then he had Marquise Pouncey come after him.
Yeah. They've
So
had an unbelievable run of centers for sure.
yeah. So I mean, it was that kind of thing. And so I think that place was, Pittsburgh was kind of like 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and people would stand up and they're clapping. That's the kind of football they like to see.
Yeah, and when you got a guy like Jerome Bettis now, to your credit, you went out and got him, right? You
Yeah,
actually went out
yeah.
and got him because he fit the role. And I mean, you had some bangers in there before then, but I mean, Jerome was the ultimate banger and did it amazingly for a long period of time, right? I mean, those guys don't last as long as Jerome did typically.
Well, this guy, he's almost like a guy like yourself. I mean, all of a sudden, like Rich Brooks comes in, and once again, offense, it's more wide open. Kind of like you're going down to a right, you're a
Right.
blocking tight end. And you're that's who you are.
Yeah.
That you can run the seams and you can do the option routes. I said, but it just wasn't the right fit. And
Yeah.
so like we got guys that fit what we were looking to bring. We wanted tough guys that were hard nosed, and you fit that. Jerome fit that, and so you surround yourself with that, and then you bring in some of those quality gifted receivers and guys like Hines Ward and the guys and Antoine Randall. We had a bunch of those guys too at the very end. So, it was that right mix of toughness, but also having some athleticism and some creativity to what you're doing.
Yeah, and so you look back, and I mean, your career, 15 years, you only had three losing seasons. You mentioned 98, 99, two of which, two of your three losing seasons I was a part of. So maybe I was the problem. I don't know, but I sure enjoyed and appreciated my time in Pittsburgh with you. But looking back on it, I guess obviously the Super Bowl obviously is the crowning achievement, right? But that's such a hard thing to do, right? Because even in the year you did it, you were a wild card team. You played every game on the road to get there. But the year before, you were 15-1, obviously the best team in football the entire year, but you don't even get to the Super Bowl. It's hard to get to, much less win a Super Bowl.
It is, and yet at the same time, I look at my 15 years, Mitch, and just relationships like we're having talk now. I mean, you bring back stories that probably wasn't like privy to, like, but I remember now as we start talking about it. And it's those relationships to me that's what made the job so special. I
Yeah.
walked away after 15 years, and it's kind of like the transition in life. My wife at the time was going through a tough time and ended up passing away 3 years later. I've remarried, married for over 10 years, and so I got 8 grandkids and had 3 daughters back then. So, but it is about being able to transition. And I'm proud of you for what you've been able to do. I mean, you walked away from the football game and all the core values and lessons learned, I'm sure, along the way has allowed you to be successful now and helping other people transition in life. Because that's what it is. You're constantly transitioning from one phase of life to another. You have to have great balance, and you also have to have great perspective. I think that was probably the biggest thing I always try to look at. And we talked about it before, is just, you know, there's a silver lining in everything you're doing. It's a lesson learned. And so when that lesson's learned, make sure you don't go down that same path again. So it's called personal growth. Every lesson that you go through is personal growth. And so I'm proud of you for what you're providing for other people and the lessons you learned along the way and sharing them with the people that work for you.
There's so many things that I've used from my football career and my time in Pittsburgh to my time running and founding Mitch Lyons Wealth. From my book Retirement of Steel. That wasn't by accident. I named it Retirement of Steel. But just our whole mantra of protecting, growing, and winning retirement. It's all built from the values I learned on the field and the meeting rooms with guys like yourself and my kids and the people that work with me. I mean, they probably get sick of hearing all the Cowherisms and the Perlicisms I throw at them every day. But you know what? There's truth in every one, right? And if you apply them, I keep saying you got to speak the same language. And if we're all speaking the same language and we got that ingrained in ourselves, we got a much better chance for success. But and I've always appreciated that with you. As you look back in your career, Coach, what would you say you're most proud of?
Um, what I'm most proud of is just being true to who I was. I think that's probably the one thing that I never tried to be someone I wasn't. I was very transparent with my emotions. I know at times, maybe, you know, got the emotions got the best of me. But at the same time, that's who I was. And I was fair. I think I was tough. I was probably tough to play for, tough to work for, but I was fair.
Yeah.
I held people, I try to get the most out of them, and I held people accountable. And I made tough decisions sometimes, whether it was releasing a player, whether it was firing a coach. But I think if you look back on it, I did it for all the right reasons, for all those core values. And I'm very proud of being able to also to have the balance in my life between my family, football, and that was my football family, and I had my family at home. And I always say before, it's what I do, it's not who I am. And so I say that from the reason that when I stepped on that field and I competed, I was ruthless. I'm going to find a way to win this game some way, like you did. Like you want to be at the you want to have the last hit.
Yeah.
When I walked off the field, I was a family guy and I was really soft-hearted. I loved my children. I was trying to be the best person I could be in my community. So, but when I was on the field, I was a certain way. So that's why I said it's what I do, it's not who I am.
Being able to take that work hat off when you walk in
Yes,
the door, right?
yes, and be able to walk off there and just, and live by the same standards you're asking the people to work who works for you that you're leading to have that same ability to do that as well.
You mentioned controlling your emotions, which brought back another memory. I believe this might have been a 1998 game too. We're down in Jacksonville on Monday night. Norm Johnson's lining up to win the game-winning field goal, and it gets blocked. And they're returning it for a touchdown down our sideline. And you take a couple steps. You almost were going to drill the guy, and you caught yourself. You controlled your emotions on that one.
I was close, and you know what's ironic about that play? That was on the exact same spot on the field that Woody Hayes punched the guy
Oh, yeah.
Clemson. So I
Yeah.
blame the ghost. I blame the ghost of Woody Hayes came up
Oh man.
through the field.
That
But I
that was a
caught
bad
myself. I
beat.
was,
That was a bad beat, but I remember the other thing I remember about that is we all leave, we leave the field, and at that time the NFL still mandated this was probably something to do with Vegas or something, but they
right.
mandated they kick the extra point. The game was over.
I
They're up
know.
by 6 or 7, whatever it is. The game's over. There's no time on the clock, and they come in and they say, "Coach, we got to have your team out for the extra point." So I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to be on an extra point block my entire career. So Bruner and I walk out there, and I think we got 11 random guys to go out there and line up for the extra point. So I got my only defensive snap of my career on that play.
See, I made you more well-rounded in life.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
the more you can do, right? That's all I said. The more you can do, make it harder for them. In fact, I heard a quote yesterday reminding me of that because I always said the more you can do in the NFL,
Right.
don't give them a reason to cut you. And the quote I just read yesterday was, "It's not how hard you work, it's how hard you are to replace." And there's a
Right. There
lot
you
of
go.
truth to that.
There's a
And
lot
the
of truth.
NFL is no different.
No.
That's why I always tried to be a long snapper. I never could get that doggone thing to stay in a spiral though. But I was the backup holder in Atlanta for Morton Anderson. I almost got thrown,
Wow.
and he was a left-hander or left footer, so I had to learn the other way. But I almost got thrown into a preseason game once because the punter got hurt. So
That's amazing. So
it didn't happen.
that's
But
great.
okay, let's before we wind this up, and I truly appreciate your time. You mentioned you mentioned your wife going through some tough times, and she Kay passed from melanoma, which I know you're a big spokesman for
Yeah.
early detection, right? Trying to get people in
Yes.
to take care of that, and I think that's tremendous. And you also mentioned your 8 grandchildren, and you mentioned all your girls. They all play college basketball, which is near and dear to my heart. My
Right.
daughter is going to start her freshman year at Ferris State University this year in Michigan to play some basketball as well. But you girls also married some athletes. 2 of your girls
Yeah.
married professional athletes, so you've got some bloodlines. I'm expecting some big upside on the Cowher
Oh, hey,
grandchildren.
hey, my oldest daughter Megan is here in Brooklyn. We're in New York, and her husband played for the Kings, and he played hockey at Princeton, and he won the cup with the Kings. So he's like a 6'5", and he was actually an enforcer in the NHL. So I said, an enforcer from Princeton. I said yes, he was smart enough to know his role.
That's
So
right.
so
That's right.
so they've got some kids that are like right now they're starting to do flag football, and they're doing well. And then my other daughter, youngest daughter, is like 6 foot. She played at Elon and at Wofford, and she married Ryan Kelly, who's a 6'11", 7 foot guy from Duke. He won a championship with Coach K
Yeah.
with the Lakers, and now he's actually still playing over in Tokyo. So their kids, as you can imagine, are very, very tall. They're very, very athletic. So
Yeah.
yes, we got some
Well, that's great breeding stock there, man. You got to keep pumping those grandkids out. And so are they going to get the Coach Cowher pregame or halftime speech ever on the
Oh,
flag
they've
games?
they've they've gone there already. We were talking a lot about having success. Now we're talking about humility. We
Yeah,
got we got to teach humility today. I said, and also the lack too much entitlement in today's world. So you're gonna have to earn it. I
yeah,
mean, just because you got the name, whatever you got the genes, you know what? You have to earn it. So you can be given a lot of great things, but if you do nothing with it and don't do it in kind of a humble and self, you know, inspiring way that you can inspire others, around you. It's not about you. It's about everyone else you can bring together. That's what leadership is. And that's what I'm trying to instill in them very, very early because they're gifted. They're going to be told how great they are. And I'm going to keep telling them how, you know what, you haven't done anything yet.
I love it. I love it. Well, you did a great job inspiring folks your entire career, Coach. And I know I appreciated my time with you, and I appreciate coming on here and everything you did in coaching. Obviously, now you've had 17, 18 years in broadcasting. The great thing about that is you never have to face a press conference where you got to talk about all the mistakes you made on Sundays and there in the press's eyes, right?
I
Um,
so so my statement is this. They said, you miss coaching. I go, no. I said, I get to coach 32 teams every Sunday, and I haven't lost a game in 18 years.
And nobody remembers what you predicted the week before. I mean,
Oh no. Hey, I always go, sometimes I go, wait, I love the underdogs. I love the underdogs. You know, you pick an underdog. And I always felt, and you remember from this, I always try to make every game personal. And making this game personal is doing something which is the greatest satisfaction in sports, is doing something that no one else thinks you can do. When they
yeah,
say you can't do something, thank you for saying that. Thank you. No six seed ever won a Super Bowl. Thank you. You can't beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. Thank you. You can't win 3 and 4 in a row. Oh, we can't. Thank you. That's all I need is a little bit of the fuel to make this personal, to do something that no one else thinks you can do. That should be your mantra in life.
yeah. Well, you did it, 2005. I mean, incredible playoff run, winning all those road games. And I always loved going on the road. I loved it because it was 53 guys and a staff going against 80,000 people in a
Yeah,
stadium. It
the
was you against
underdog.
the world.
Yeah,
Nobody expected you to win, and I always loved that. I miss that. People ask me, "Do you miss football?" I say, I miss Sundays. I don't miss Mondays, right? I
no,
don't miss plantar fasciitis and Achilles tendonitis. I
right.
don't miss any of that, or rehab and all that. And Coach, I greatly appreciate your time today, and I appreciate the years, your time with the Steelers, my time I got to spend with you, and I enjoy watching you on Sundays. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. I'm in Lions country now, in
Right.
Michigan. And they look like a team that is going to be hard to beat. I mean, they have so many weapons. Do you ever envision, or do you look back and ever remember a time you had as many weapons as they have on offense?
No, I mean they do, and I just love what Dan Campbell has done. His short time there, he's a lot like you, like right. He's a blue collar tight end that played the game, tough guy. And he talked about biting knees on his way after getting up when he first got there, and I think this Dan kind of embodies what Detroit is all about. And to me, and I think that they are a reflection of him. They're a
Yeah,
team that they're going to run the ball. They're going to get fancy with. They got all the skilled positions. Defensively, I love where Aaron Glenn is it's so sad to see what losing an Aiden Hutchinson because
yeah,
man, you talk about a guy that embodies Detroit Lions on so many levels. He's from Detroit, and I mean, he was on his way to maybe being Defensive Player of the Year. So, but they'll overcome that.
yeah.
To me, it's like having a Dan Campbell when you lose a guy like that. Is that he thrives on this kind of leadership. He thrives in this kind of adversity. So I think the Lions they got a great head coach. They got a great team,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to be an exciting year for them.
And you don't replace an Aiden Hutchinson with one guy,
No,
right? Everyone's going to
no.
have to raise their level of play, and Aaron Glenn gets paid a paycheck too. He's going to have to create some
Yeah,
stuff on D with
yeah,
their, but they've got some young defensive backs and stuff that have really stepped up.
love
And
it.
Brad Holmes has done a great job building that roster through the
Yeah,
draft and the strategic free agent acquisitions. And I think I see a lot of similarities between Dan and yourself, just because you guys are authentic, right? I mean, you
right.
you say what you think, and you're not pulling punches, and he's been that way from the get-go, and the entire state has embraced him. And even that first year when they had a rough go of it, but they were
Yeah,
in games, right? And you could tell they were making progress. And then the next year they start off kind of bad again, but then they finished strong. And then last year it kind of all came together until that second half in San Francisco, which I was actually out at that game. And that first half was a lot of fun, and then it kind of fell apart at the end. But they seem to have it going again. Big game this week against Minnesota. So we'll look forward to your analysis on Sunday. But Coach, again, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on the Lion's Share, and it's just great to catch up with you.
good to see you, Mitch. You've done great, man. Proud of you, and thank you for taking me down memory lane. It's
All
been a
right.
long
Thanks again. Sounds good.